Hey guys, welcome to another Tradesmen Talk episode. How are you doing, Wilson?
Man, it's a good day to be alive. We got nothing but first world problems.
Yeah, yeah. Today is wrapping up towards the end of the week. We're a
Yeah,
little bit late on today's episode, but we're
didn't you
getting it
have
done.
some really big thing happen with your shop though this week?
Yeah, the Orlando team passed a new record for the highest grossing project. Up until recently, it was 45,000, and the team in Orlando just closed a $50,000 project on Wednesday,
Nice.
so a couple days ago. And yeah, it was awesome. It was great to watch that happen and be in a different position within the business, because it means a lot for the person who closed that deal.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels really good to have created that environment to not only be able to have a team that closes that deal, but to give that opportunity to the person that closed it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that all makes sense.
Oh yeah, dude,
But
it feels good when
the commission's going to be insane on it, so it's
yeah.
like awesome to see that go to that person.
Yeah, when everybody makes money. Well, I mean, we talk about this a lot in the podcast, but it's like when you create these win-win situations, everybody walks away a little bit more in their pocket. Like everybody's happy. It just happens in this case. I think everybody walked away with a lot more in their
Yeah.
yeah.
And $50,000 refinishing job is far from normal.
Right.
And so it's definitely a memorable moment. And even in the Tampa team, we just set up a new salesperson over there who is actually the managing partner. So he has equity over there.
Yeah. Okay.
But he's now taking on the sales role, and he's very much used to being on the job sites. And so he's taking a step back a little bit and trying his swings at sales. And he went on 3 appointments and closed 2 of them on the same day, and the third one has verbally committed, and so he might be a 3 out of 3. One of those was like 5,200, another one was over 10,000, so still pretty good size project.
So maybe
I'm not sure what the verbal commit is.
yeah,
What's that?
Because maybe he keeps doing that because two out of 3, I'll take that.
Yeah, he's a likable guy, and that is very much evident now. And he's been on the job sites for a couple years, and so he has a lot of context to the process and different things that might come up. So I'm sure he was able to speak to those things and come off as the expert that he is.
Right.
And then because of his ability to hold a conversation, had created a safe place for the homeowner to make that sort of decision. And he did that a few times that day and got 2 checks and is very much on the way to getting a third. He's just got to go and actually pick it up. But as we know, it's not a deal until you collect that deposit.
Yeah, that and anybody that thinks otherwise is just setting themselves up for heartbreak. Like as soon as I hear that, like, yeah, I've got like 3, they're in the bag, they just haven't given me a check yet. I'm like, you have nothing in your bag, man. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we had good weeks. And so yeah, a lot of things to celebrate. And then the Ocala team's going strong. You already know this, but some people may not know that my dad is working on a lot of projects in the Ocala area.
Yep.
And he had surgery on his eye, and he's now recovered from that. He's been doing a few jobs over the past few weeks. So he's back in the full swing of things, and we're setting up another team over there in that area. I bought a shed that we're going to use as a workshop space.
Like one of those, like the ones you can buy at like Menards or Lowe's where it's like prefab and you.
Yeah,
those
exactly.
Things,
my hometown is like littered with sheds, stores, I guess you can call them.
Yeah.
It's so funny to notice like a few select industries in my hometown that work. And so you start seeing a bunch of them pop up.
Right.
And it's car washes, gas stations, fast food restaurants, and sheds. Our prime domestic product in Citrus County.
You know, somewhere to clean your car, the shed somewhere to keep your car, the fast food you can eat in your car. I mean, I think there's a theme.
Yeah, it all makes sense. And so we locked in a smaller medium-sized shed. It has a roll-up door and an entry door, and it'll be big enough to get him going and he's in the process of building out his own team.
Nice.
Because my dad doesn't want to manage anyone, so he's going to be kind of interdependent with the team over in Ocala area. So yeah, we're making moves. How's your team in Texas?
Dude, team's good. We spent a little bit of time this week doing some operational stuff. So making sure that, it's very easy when you're in a stage of growth to say, okay, we're focused on sales, we're focused on revenue, we're focused on this. And if given the choice between focusing on that and something else, I'm always going to choose revenue. There's nothing better for the business, and anybody that wants to argue with me is wrong. We don't even have to go there. There's nothing better for the business. But you can't be on a seesaw, right? So we wanted to make sure that, there are a few things that we're falling behind on. We got those taken care of. We've got a partnership that we've just started on with a major, these guys do entire kitchen remodels, and the refinishing of the cabinets isn't their best part, but when they sell that, they obviously get more money for other parts of the project for the homeowner. So it's more value added. So we've got some projects that we're working out with them and kind of smoothing out the kinks in that relationship, because it's got to be a win-win situation. And so we got some real clarity on that, which I think is going to be big moving forward. I think those guys are going to bring us probably 3 jobs a month just from that one relationship.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
it's almost a crew.
It's almost a crew. Almost a crew by itself. Yeah. So our next step, we've got, we're 10 months in, actually crazy. Yeah. So about 10 months in, our first actual real full week was in June of last year. So 10 months in, we've got 2 crews running full time. We're going to be in a position, I think, obviously I like numbers, but the way the bank's looking, I think we're going to be in a position to hire a 3rd crew within the next month.
Nice.
Yeah. And still have our cushion that we need. It's good. It's smooth. And,
that 3rd job a week usually is a very pivotal, I may have said that word wrong, very pivotal moment for the operators, because it enables them to really start focusing on the business a little bit more. Because as we've seen, when you're growing the business, you don't really have enough resources and enough on the plate to just have a manager.
Yep.
And so very much it's all hands on deck at the very beginning. And even if that's just one person, they're doing everything. Yes. And so once you get to 3 jobs a week, you're producing enough revenue and profit typically to where you can alleviate yourself a little bit as an operator to put in even more time on sales, which typically can at that point even double revenue, because they're able to bring in so many more deposits with the more availability that they now have.
Yeah. And so when we designed it, and not everybody launches it this way, but since I have a managing partner and we wanted to make a really, really good win-win situation, we created it so that he's got a managerial salary right out of the gates. And so at 2 jobs, we have enough profit that it's good and exciting, but at 3 jobs, his pay doesn't increase based on that. And so our fixed costs stay the same, but at 3 jobs, our profit, everything after that is just money we keep. And so for us, hitting 3 jobs a month is going to be, the difference between putting $8,000 to $10,000 in a bank and putting, $20,000 in a bank every single month. And that's significant, because then we have play money for testing, right? Play money for, hey, we want to do this ads thing. Maybe we want to sponsor the Austin Kite Festival. I mean, probably not, but having the flexibility.
Kite Festival sounds awesome.
Dude, it's sick. I want us to have the biggest kite, because our logo is a bat. So we'll just have a giant bat up there. But yeah, it's the flexibility that comes with it. And I think that's really the drive. When you're a one-man operation, the oh shit factor when something goes wrong is really high, right? Yeah. When you've got a few more crews, you can kind of spread it out. You can build a little more cushion, and it's going to be a much better work-life balance for him.
Absolutely. And I would go as far to say that a big reason on why the team over there has progressed so quickly, even with some pitfalls that were outside of your control, but they still happened, and you adapted and dealt with it quickly and moved on quickly, and now you're back making more progress, is because you guys have been good at identifying the problem and engineering a solution, taking action, and going on with your day. Right. And that's something that I really want to dive into deeper for today's video and call, is to help people with their thought process on not only determining what the true challenge is, but how to create a hierarchy of priorities in which to attack the challenge. Because as we've seen many times over, even with ourselves at times, we get caught up in being productive and busy doing things that still need to be done, but they aren't necessarily affecting the challenge that is causing the stall or the delay with whatever your goal might be. And so a lot of business owners in home services, they might have the challenge of cash flow, and they might decide, do I need to figure out how to get more jobs, or do I need to figure out how to increase the profitability of the jobs that I do have? Or do I need to figure out how to condense the timelines of the project that I'm currently working on? And all of these can be very valid questions, but the answers can be different depending on the circumstances. And so I think it would be valuable to dive into a little bit about what that thought process might look like, and then potential solutions for this sort of situation or conundrum.
Yeah, well, so I think there's two parts there, because when you're looking at how you're going to categorize a problem and ascertaining what the real problem is, the reason it always changes per circumstances is because the problem is relative to the goal, right?
Right.
Like if you and your girlfriend aren't getting along, but the goal is not to get married, it really doesn't matter, right?
Sure.
You know, it may not be as pleasant, but it doesn't matter. However, if the goal is marriage, we need to figure that thing out. We want to work through that really quickly. And so it's like, I was recently reading, I don't know, I'll find the blog I was reading, but I was reading a process, and what he was talking about is one of the problems that I think business owners tend to have is they have a goal and they have sometimes tactics, but they don't have a strategy, right? And tactics without strategy doesn't actually get you anywhere, right? You have to know what the overarching purpose and the goal you're working towards, and how the specific tactics give into that. And so I think the first thing is to be able to figure out where a problem lies, is you have to figure out what the actual goal is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that could be zoomed out as far as you want to go, or zoomed in as far as you want to go. And depending on your point of view, you might get different answers. And to understand what the overarching goal is essential, because if you are a business owner, there should be some sort of reason behind why you're owning that business. There should be some sort of goal as to how that business aligns with the achievement of your goal. And most people can say to some extent that they're going into business to generate financial gains. And there's certainly value in understanding what that financial gain might bring you and what goal you might have that aligns with the money your business brings in. But if we zoom in a little bit further and we understand that, okay, the goal of the business is to make money, where do you go from there? And you can look at what you're currently doing and make adjustments to that. And you can also look at things that you're not doing and try to implement some of these tactics that have been brought up in your head, or through things that you've read, or some of the content that you're watching on this channel. You know, there's a lot of things to think about. And
I got a question.
Maybe, what's that?
How do you define make money? Because I talk to obviously a lot of business owners, guys that are struggling, and they're like, I want to make X number of dollars. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by make? The answer I get is usually different than what the highly successful business owner is talking about. So what do you mean when you say make money?
So there's so many layers to this, and most small business owners who, you know, my personal perspective may not be as valuable as the general audience who might be a small business person who's focusing on trying to build a sustainable business. When they're talking about making money, it's usually profit that they can use to grow the business in a way that supports their desired work-life balance.
Okay.
And so typically we're talking about profit when we use the words make money.
Yeah, I think it's good to define that, because I talk to a lot of people. They'll go, "Yeah, I want to make $20,000 in a month." I'm like, business or take home,
Yeah.
because 20,000 is a useless goal. I always make fun of ecom guys. They're like, "I did $1 million last year." I'm like, "Yeah, but you had a 3% profit margin. Like, what? What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Right? So
So understanding that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, after you've established that, what's the next thought process for you?
So once I determine how much money I'm actually trying to make or what I believe is possible within the business that I'm building, I think it becomes a healthy approach to reverse engineer that and consider the products or services that your business can offer. And you certainly want to start with the ones that you're able to fulfill on.
Right.
And so when you consider the product or services that you're offering, you can then use that metric or what you're able to charge for that product and service to then start to incorporate that reverse engineering process. So if our goal is, let's just go with $100,000 a year profit, how much profit can we practically expect to generate from one sale of our product or service?
Right.
And within our business of cabinet refinishing, we can calculate that pretty accurately, because we have a lot of fixed costs, and because we specialize our business, we have a lot more predictability than a business that offers a bunch of different services. And so it could be a little bit more complicated the more services you have, but in essence, you want to try to reverse engineer your goal and kind of walk backwards. And so if it's $100,000 a year profit, how many products or how many projects do you have to fulfill on in order to profit that much? Let's just say it's 10, just for the sake of simplicity. Some businesses are going to be a lot more. But let's say it's 10 projects to fulfill on to get $100,000 a year profit. Well, are you able to do that with what you have? And if not, what resources do you now need to bring in order to create a system that can increase your odds of completing those 10 projects within that year? And if you don't have that system and you're just kind of guessing at it, you're decreasing your chances of making a good bet.
Yeah.
And so whether your business is specialized or not, you want to have a concise process within the way you fulfill on your product or service, so that you can create practical expectations around the timelines or the process of generating that $100,000 a year profit.
Right. Well, and that really is, that's the kind of the basis behind your KPIs, right? You keep performance indicators. You're breaking that goal down and saying, okay, well, here's my benchmark. If I know to hit 100,000 that, we've got to complete 50 jobs, like, awesome. How do I get to 50 jobs? How many jobs do we need to do a month? How many jobs do we need to do a week? How many crews do we need to have? But when you're looking at isolating that problem, the thing that brings up is there's a lot of different solutions to that, right? You could have more crews, or you could have crews running more profitably, right? Or you could have the same crews doing the work in less time. So where do you typically go from there? How do you determine which of the routes you think is going to serve you best?
My default is to start with the path of least resistance, and it could be summarized by making do with what you have. And it's not as simple as just literally, I have, two hands. What can I do with my own two hands to achieve my goal?
Right.
What I also have is a brain. And so what resources can I acquire with the resources that I have in order to achieve my goal and with the least amount of friction? And to kind of make that a little bit easier to digest, you can, if your goal is to increase profit. So, let's start with our goal of being $100,000 a year profit. What is preventing you from doing that? And try to figure out where your blockage is. And that blockage might be where you want to work on next. If you think that getting closer or getting that $100,000 a year mark is a matter of you doing more jobs, and the fact that you're not doing enough jobs is the limiting factor, then the challenge can be, how do I do more jobs?
Right.
But if it's possible for you to reach $100,000 a year on your own, with the jobs that you're bringing in now, I would start with that.
Right.
If you can charge more and you can spend less, I would start with that. And once you maximize that, then you can start thinking about bringing in more people to kind of multiply the effects.
I think part of the reason that's a sticking point for a lot of people is, well, one, I mean, and we've talked about this before, but something to admit, sometimes just sitting down with a piece of paper, or I like to do with the whiteboard, and being like, this is what's broken, why, right? And just writing out, this is all stuff that's not working. And then when you get to the point where it's solution time, like, okay, I could hire more crews. A lot of people will find one solution and they'll just go, okay, this is my solution, as opposed to, okay, I could hire more crews. I could raise my prices. I could lower my material costs. I could, get more referrals and reduce my marketing costs, but get the same effect. Like, they don't list out, I think, as many options as they could, and then explore those, because yeah, dude, it's way easier to raise your prices by 10% than it is to hire another crew.
Right. And to add to that, though, if your goal is to get to $100,000 a year, predictably, but practically you can only maybe increase, maybe you can only get to $50,000 a year on your own, trying to squeeze out another 10 grand that year with yourself isn't going to achieve your goal. So I wouldn't necessarily start with that.
Right.
But I would, if I thought it was feasible, if I could on my own create $100,000 a year profit, I would start with that. But if it's not a practical solution, then I wouldn't start with getting every juice out of the squeeze that I'm already squeezing. I would actually start to work on multiplying myself, and then kind of create a more optimized training approach that does increase the effectiveness of each individual. So there might be a need to start with multiplying or adding people, right, but it takes an honest look at what you can achieve with what you have first before you start adding more pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah. I think that's probably the crux of that point, right? You need to be able to, I think we went really deep in this on the honesty episode, right? Like being honest with yourself about what's capable. Because I've seen with different business models, I've seen both sides. I've seen guys be like, well, if I just double my effort, I'm like, dude, you're working 60 hours a week. You're not
exactly,
you're not doubling your effort. That is it's a silly idea. You're like, if I double my effort, I could have a heart attack by 35. Like, oh yeah, good plan. Right. It's like, or, you'll see kind of the opposite of that, where a guy's like, yeah, there's no way I could ever make 100,000 with a business as a solo operator. It's like, I know lots of people make $100,000 as solo operators. So that's not true either. It's really being able to look at the problem with an open mind and go, is this the truth, or is this what I'm telling myself? And once you've got the truth, then you can actually look at those options and say, okay, cool, it's viable or it's not viable. Because, if you're, and no offense to pressure washers, but like, I believe that if you're a one-man operated pressure washer, you're going to have a hard time breaking $100,000 a year.
Right.
It's a tight market. If you're a cabinet refinisher, I mean, I can point to you about at least 40 of them. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's some even more. Like, I know window installers that make multiple hundreds of thousands as a technician.
Right.
It can vary depending on what service you provide, but that's why it's so important to really take your goal and reverse engineer that in context with the product and service that you provide. And like you brought up, if you're a pressure washer, it's going to be harder than if you're a window installer.
Right.
And so whatever that is, be honest with yourself and what your own capability is within the range of tolerance, because no one's going to tolerate doubling their effort for too long. So within the range of tolerance, what can you do yourself with what you have?
Yeah.
But if you realize that the missing puzzle piece is another person or another team or multiple people, then you can start to construct a way to get you closer to that next step, which might be bringing in more people. But to touch back on an earlier statement, you still want to have that clarity of the systemized fulfillment. That's why it is good to have a clear process for how to fulfill on your product or service, because if you just put more people in a room that's on fire, it doesn't necessarily help the situation.
Well, wait, what was the example you used earlier? Because was like if you've got a boat on an iceberg.
Yeah. So like if you're trying to move a ship forward, but you have some people painting the deck and other people, fixing the bathrooms, or new stewardess coming onto the boat, but the boat is stuck in an iceberg, it's not a good allocation of resources or a distribution of time and energy. And so really defining what are you trying to do, and then what might be the next high priority task that can help you get there. And sometimes, we don't mean to oversimplify these problems. You have complicated things where sometimes you got to take a step back before you can move forward. But if you start your journey with zooming out and then slowly, incrementally zooming in, you'll often find things can take care of themselves a little bit better. Yep. Instead of having to just go straight for the punch and realize that your arm was broken to begin with.
Right. Well, there's a great question that I think people can consider with that, because, if you're so caught up in, again, tactics and strategy, if your tactic is like, well, if I had a nicer boat, it'd move faster. And so you're getting new sales, but it's parked on an iceberg. It really doesn't matter how good, the sales are. Right. And so there's a degree to which I think zooming out is really important. But if you figure out like, okay, we've got all of these problems, right? The question you always ask yourself is like, how can I move forward without fixing everything? Like, what's the one thing that I can fix, and how do I zoom in?
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
It's so easy to get caught up in 1,000 things around you, because there are 1,000 strategies, and it's worse now than it used to be, right? Mm-hmm. Like, should you advertise on TikTok or should you advertise on Facebook? Like, is that a life-threatening decision? I don't know. If you make it one, right? But yeah, realistically, the most important thing is like, how can I find effective advertising without wasting a bunch of time?
Absolutely. We got to get clarity around what our goal is, what challenges might be in the way of achieving that goal. Think about what you have currently and what you can do with the resources that you have, including your own mind on figuring out how to get things done without you necessarily doing it. And then reverse engineer that process so that you can be proactive with that journey and some of the things that might come up later on for other people you bring onto that team. And so with that said, we do got to jump on another call here. I hope that helped you guys get some clarity around the decision-making process on making momentum and forward movement with your business and achieving your goals. If there's anything that you want more clarity on, or if you have any questions on anything, guys, feel free to shoot us an email over at support@cabinetstartup.com. Regardless of the trade that you're in, we would be happy to help you. A lot of these challenges are very similar within one industry to the next. So we'd be happy to give you some guidance. Feel free to, again, shoot us an email at support@cabinetstartup.com. And with that, we'll talk to you guys again soon. Have a good day.